Between the two of them, the inside of Cokes, Parker gets too heavily involved, and that's Whitehead and Cokes.
And mics are on.
Hello everybody and welcome to the AOC Gaming League of Champions powered by VRRC. You're here tonight to watch the first of 4 rounds in the first of 4 championships, and if that sounds just a touch confusing, don't worry, we'll be here to explain it along the way. My name is Jack Oliphant, like you can see on your screen, and I'm the first of 2 commentators that will be taking you through not only this evening but the next 4 rounds at least as well. Alongside me in the virtual commentary box is Dave Marshall. Dave, how the devil are you?
A bit happier than in that picture, I think, on screen. Yeah, no, I'm doing very well, and yeah, I haven't dressed up quite the occasion like you have either.
I was going to say, I'm going for the dicky bow there, aren't I? I think I'm at an awards evening or something. We're at the first of 4 rounds and the first of 4 championships, like I just said before. We are, of course, at Misano for the first round of the Ginetta Super Cup Championship. And, well, Dave, you were going to explain to us a little bit how the League of Champions works for anybody out there who's maybe watching who hasn't quite heard or seen this before.
Yeah, so the AOC Gaming League of Champions is comprised of 4 championships. The Ginetta Super Cup, the Touring Car, the GT4 Sprint, and the Mini JCW. Each championship is a 4-round, 8 standalone competition with its own prize pool. So tonight, Jack, the drivers are all competing for first place in the championship gets an SR5 chassis, second an SR3, third a GTF1, and so forth. You know, you can see there's 8 prizes up for grabs in this championship alone. But you know, that runs for each 4 championships. But then also, all of that goes into a point system towards the end for an overall league, and then there's also an overall league prize. But there's 2 races at the end that sort of splits the top 10 and the bottom 10, and there's prize pools for that as well. I mean, regarding esports competitions and championships to get involved in, I don't think there's been bigger prize pools as this, and as accessible for everyone who's entering as well.
Yeah, exactly. And now we've thrown all the information you could ever want at you. Don't worry, we will help you digest it throughout the evening and throughout the coming weeks as well. But to start with, we've obviously got to focus on what's going on in front of us right now, and it is round 1 at Misano. Now, the drivers, I think, are just out there with the last couple of minutes of practice before they go into a 15-minute qualifying session. By the looks of the graphic on screen, on our notes, we've got 20 minutes, so we will just keep an eye on and see which one that is more applicable of. But then 2 races as well, 2 20-minute races. Race 2 is also a top 10 reverse grid, which I'm sure will be thrilling as ever. If anybody has seen racing over the years and has seen reverse grids and such like the touring cars, you're going to expect maybe a touch of carnage, but great quality racing more often than not. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And speaking of great quality racing, Dave, we've got a plethora of fantastic drivers here tonight, both sim races at a high level and also real life races, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got a few, don't we? Yeah, we've got, you know, I think there's 2 or 3 drivers from the current JCW mini grid. Dan Zelos, who finished 2nd last year. Callum Newsham, which, to be fair, has proven himself to be a real weapon behind the simulator. You know, right up there in the lap times on the server for this week. So yeah, some drivers really to look out for. We've got British GT drivers like Alex Tuck-Jones, but then, as you say, multiple champions in esports world. So we've got like the likes of Jack McIntyre, Robbie Staleford, who you might have seen race with us in previous championships, also there, who are going to be right near the top. I tell you what, I wouldn't like to put my neck on the line and say who I'm putting money on for this round.
I must admit, I think I've done commentating for just over a year now, and for the past 6 months, I think every single championship I've done has involved Callum Newsham in one way or another, and often Dave Newsham as well. His dad quite often jumps on as well, so no wonder he's quite handy behind the sim. He's been putting plenty of practice in, but like you said, he's actually normally on the JCW Mini, isn't he? He's a front-wheel drive specialist, you could say, but clearly not, because he's in the Ginetta Super Cup, and he's absolutely razzing it around Misano at the moment. Qualifying, I believe, has just started, so the drivers are starting to make their way out on circuit for the first of their 15-minute qualifying sessions. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing who comes out on top. But Ryan Elliott, just before we went live, Dave, actually, you caught that he did a flying lap that you were very impressed with.
Yeah, you know, Ryan's impressed me, you know, more so than ever in the past sort of few weeks. Really got his head down. He's putting really good lap times on the board, and so far he's gone about a 10th faster than anyone else has in the server so far. And more crucially, Jack, he's actually gone out now for qualifying. He's actually leading the way, so he doesn't have any distractions in front of him. He can get his head down, get the tyres in that window, get that gap from behind, and just go for it. So actually, he's put himself in an absolute ideal position to get that pole lap straight in there and make everyone else stress about it.
I was going to say, some drivers just prefer the fact that they can just go out and get their head down and do it themselves, don't they? I think, yeah, probably the most notable one of which at the F1 at the moment is Max Verstappen, isn't he? He's the kind of person that, you know, just don't care. I don't want the slipstream. I don't need it. I don't need a teammate. I'm just going to go out there and try and set my pole time and let the rest of them worry about it. And that's exactly what Ryan Elliott has gone out there to do at the moment, as well as a few other drivers still sat in the pit lanes, and we'll be able to bring you the updates as soon as qualifying starts to happen, obviously. As soon as there's something to see, we'll show it to you, I'm sure. But Misano circuit, Dave, it's a bit of, well, it's one of those ones that doesn't really always get brought up, does it, in the sort of realms of great calendars, I suppose. You know, it doesn't appear much on, well, I don't think it's ever appeared on the F1 calendar, and it's not on the iRacing calendar or anything like that. So it's a bit of a niche track, which may lend itself to some people here.
Yeah, we're going to maybe see a hot lap video of me trying to take it round here if we have time during the qualifying, and you can witness how I get round it. But so far, Ryan Elliott is getting round it just fine, currently with the pole lap. But obviously, a 154 is nowhere near where we expect it to be, because obviously that's an out lap. So, yeah, Ryan's out front. Let's see what he can do in the lap times.
Yeah, well, another thing we're very much looking forward to seeing as well, or I'm a bit of a sucker for it. In nearly every series I do, I always make one or two comments about it. And we saw the rotating liveries, didn't we, as the stream was sort of loading up, as the countdown was coming down. And if you look at the current BTCC grid, it's all a bit bland. It's all a bit, you know, they're either black or dark grey or dark blue cars or something like that. Yet here today, we've got some really colourful things going on. We're Stapleford in the Sancho Simsport with Simply Race on the side as well. It's an extremely colourful car. You're not going to miss it, are you? And all the way down the field, you're gonna know who's driving each car, don't you? As soon as you start watching this for more than about 10 minutes, you're going to know each and every driver just by just a glance at their car, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, you'll probably tell us better than anyone here, Jack, that BTCC is probably made up of what, eight teams or something like that. So the cars, for all don't look that different, you know, you've only really got 8 teams worth to look different. Whereas, you know, we've got nearly 20 drivers here on the grid, and there's probably 2 or 3 of them that's in a team, and other than that, everyone is racing for themselves. So hence why we're getting such individual graphic schemes. And I think you'll agree, they'll look great, and it's going to help our job distinguishing who's who.
Oh yeah, there's nothing worse as a commentator when there's about 5 cars and they're all like identical, and they're all pretty similar on pace as well, so they all start next to each other. It's can cause a real headache. But as Max Edmondson goes on pole position, that's one of the first sort of semi-decent looking lap times that we've got coming our way, haven't we? A 143.0. Now we are expecting about half a second off that if practice is anything to go by. But to be fair, we've only got 15 minutes here in qualifying, and I think Ryan Elliott, was north of 250 laps over the course of since this server has been live, which has been a couple of days now. So we may not see that repeated straight away, but we are expecting to see a couple of tenths off, maybe diving into the 42s, and already there is Callum Newsham, who did seem very quick. He was in fact fastest in this evening's practice session, right up until Ryan Elliott sucked that absolute flyer in before we went live. So Callum Newsham showing that he can still do it. He can do it under pressure as well. 42.6, about a tenth down on what he did in practice tonight. So he's got right back on it.
He has indeed, but as we jump on board here with Robbie Stapleford, he has gone nearly a tenth faster in Sector 1 alone here, Jack. So, you know, he's sitting there in 4th position at the moment, 2 seconds off the pace, but that's not where we expect Robbie to finish up. You know, watch him put a lap in. As long as he's within track limits here, which is the white line, unless if there's a red and white curbing, which the red and white curbing is an extension of the track. As long as you keep a wheel within that red and white curbing, the lap is legal. The game distinguishes that. So as you see coming around there, really far left, but he's still on that curbing. This is looking like quite a nice clean lap to me. He is Sector 2. He's beat his personal best lap here. So this could be on for a really good lap here, Jack.
It is indeed, yeah, as Ryan Elliott does get into the 42s, or 42.8 to go into 2nd place. Stapleford looks to be coming across the line now, so keep an eye on where he's going to go on the left-hand side of your screen. The timing tower changes and puts him into 2nd place, a 10th behind Callum Newsham and about a 10th ahead of Ryan Elliott. So at the moment, he's the one that separates the 2 quickest drivers in practice. However, like we were saying, we are expecting maybe a couple more tenths to be knocked off the qualifying times before the end of the next 9 minutes. So, what have we got for you tonight? I think we've got 3 drivers who are currently unable to have attended, so which means we've got 17 drivers out there on track. The 3 drivers that haven't been able to turn up tonight are Robin, Max Coates and Kat MP. Apparently Kat is stuck in traffic and Max is off down to Snetterton. I'm not entirely sure what's happened to Robin, but with any luck we'll get an explanation as we go throughout the evening.
Yeah, I mean, you know, with a grid that's made up with, you know, very, very busy racing drivers in real life, you know, it's one of them things where, you know, unfortunately real world things do clash with the sim world. And, you know, Max is very busy coaching, and I believe Kat, he was down in Wales coaching as well, so she hasn't managed to get back in time. But it's nice to see they're still trying to get involved in the sim racing world. And, you know, it looks great on stream, doesn't it, have so many of these top drivers taking part in our championships.
Indeed, yeah, I've just seen an unfortunate message. Unfortunately, Dan Zelos, one of the drivers we were mentioning right at the start, is unable to take part tonight. Apparently, his internet connection is just causing havoc with him, and he'd probably feel like he's more of a liability out there for the other drivers if he keeps lagging in and out and not sure where he is on track. So that's fair enough. Unfortunately, We've lost Dan, but hopefully he'll be back for the next round at Mugello.
Yeah, it's a real shame that I was actually speaking to Dan just the other night. I do a lot of coaching with Dan regarding the sim world, And yeah, unfortunately, he seems to be having some internet issues with his house at the moment, and certain kitchen appliances seem to be affecting his internet connection, which is quite a strange thing. But yeah, hopefully he can get that figured out and continue with the rest of the championship.
It's a very odd one. Never heard of a coffee machine start playing internet havoc, but there you go. I'm sure there's more of a complex explanation than the one I just tried to come up with.
The Wi-Fi, Jack.
Wi-Fi, exactly. Yeah, I mean that's what it is, isn't it? So Andy Dorman has got a couple of green sectors in, hasn't he? He's in 6th place. We can see him slowly move up, although his 3rd sector wasn't quite as quick as I'm sure he would have liked. So still 2.5 seconds back from the pollster to Callum Newsham, who hasn't improved his time as he goes wide as another car. I'm not sure who that was in the red Super Cup. It was going, well, very making sure that he was definitely getting out of the way of Callum Newsham there, wasn't he? Well, the looks of it, Callum has put in a purple sector 2. Callum Newsham's put in a purple sector 1. Ryan Elliott has put in a purple sector 2. So all of a sudden, the two drivers improving. Callum Newsham hasn't yet set his sector 2 time. Let's see if he can pip Ryan to the quickest in the middle sector.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? It's really starting to heat up now as we're getting towards the end of quali. You're over halfway through. It's really starting to get to the point where them times are starting to come down. A lot of drivers probably not going out. As you see there, Ryan Elliott going pole by, what's that, 100th of a second there over Callum Newsham. But Callum Newsham is still on the lap. All I say that he's actually just dipped his 2nd sector. So I believe he won't be posting this lap to go potentially faster. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, as I was saying, there's a lot of drivers that don't seem to have thrown that much caution to qualifying. I think you'd agree, Jack. They've gone out trying to go as fast as they can straight away without getting that sort of banker lap in and making sure, you know, they can get something on the board and then improve on. They're all just really trying to go out and go as quick as they can straight away.
Yeah, I think I just saw Robbie Stapleford turning backwards down the pit lane, which was a bit of an odd sight to see, but hopefully he won't have damaged his car. I'm sure he can just spawn back to the pits and grab a brand new one. But I think Callum Newsham, yeah, he was obviously up in Sector 1 on anybody else, but his Sector 2, I think he dipped a tyre off maybe. I don't know if that means he's slower or if it's invalidated. His Sector 2 has come up as red. So, yeah, 0.017. That's incredibly close. It's very nice and refreshing to see a sort of sim series where the times are that close, isn't it? Right at the top of the order. Quite often, maybe we see one, maybe two drivers, you know, sort of running away with it in somewhat in the sim series that I've been covering. But then the mid pack is where all the action is. The likes of from 5th down to 12th or something. They're all very close. But here, up and down the field, it looks like we sort of got. I mean, there we go. I think that's Maxi Rorik. He's got into 4th place. And that's half a tenth back for Robbie Stapleford.
Yeah, you know, we've got 5 drivers here within half a second. And if I'm honest, no Max Edmondson, I think he'd be a little bit disappointed with where he's sat at the moment. You know, he's definitely got a lot more time in the bag, and he'll know that. I've seen what his practice laps are, and to not be within that 42 bracket yet, and I know fine well he'll be kicking himself. But we'll wait and see whether or not the pressure gets to him here, Jack. You know, there's still 4 minutes left to qualify, and as long as he can get out of them pits and get a few laps in, you know, we might see a change for the top yet.
We may well do, yeah. And if you're wondering on the timing tower, the drivers at the bottom of your screen are Ed Akers. I'm not entirely sure. I think he's just gone out there to start a lap. I just don't think he's got a clean lap in so far. He is out there at the moment. Tom O'Farrell in 17th position. He's actually the broadcast car. Richard Hayden, he's actually the safety car, which is why he's in the Mercedes SLS. It's also why he was going quickest in practice, as he was having a bit of fun in the server. Andy Carroll, again, not entirely sure. He just hasn't gone out to set a time. So I'm not sure if Andy's in the server. Hopefully he is. Hopefully he turns up for race number 1. But yeah, that is the sort of reason why there's a few drivers at the end of the timing tower that maybe haven't posted the time.
Yeah, exactly that. You know, we're not really seeing anything that differently. Ryan Elliott's actually gone slightly faster than he set previously in the session, but then he's Sector 2 slightly slow, so I don't think we're going to see Ryan Elliott here improve his lap time. But I tell you what, regarding the racing here, Jack, you know, Callum Newsham sat here 200ths behind Ryan Elliott. What's your approach to the start of this race here? You're going to go into it thinking, you know, I'm next to him here on the grid. He's fast enough, he's on the same pace as me. Do we work together, go ahead, get that gap? Or does he go, Ryan's really quite quick here, we need to get this move done quite early and press on?
I think it's going to be a case of those two probably wanting to pull away slightly. At the end of the day, like we said before, there are 5 drivers all within half a second of each other, aren't there? And realistically, there's 4 drivers within 2/10 of each other. So I don't think it's going to be a case of, oh, we'll be able to pull away. I think it'll be more of a case of whoever can do it more consistently and who can keep their nose out of trouble. Ryan Elliott's key goal right now, the thing he'll be praying for more than anything else, is that Robbie Stapleford, or whoever ends up in 3rd place, launches a move up the inside of Callum Newsham. The launch off the line is probably the most important thing here, because that, if you get it right off the front row of the grid, you could see yourself clear, you could see yourself not in danger from a launch up the inside from any position. Dan Zelos has just posted the time up to 9th position, so maybe he's rejoined, which would be very interesting. Hopefully his internet holds out. But yeah, I think that's the most important thing. You know, these drivers need to get their launch right, and then just pray, if they're in the lead, that somebody launches one at the inside of maybe 2nd or 3rd place, and then a little bit of a gap opens up. However, they're all pretty high-level drivers, aren't they? I don't think they're going to let the pressure get to them.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know. These things, the pressure does get the drivers, but it isn't the sim world. You know, all these drivers are on real wheels, should I say? They're not on the keyboards or game controllers. So they're all on wheels with real pedals. You know, you'll probably experience it yourself, Jack, in real life. You know, when them nerves and you've got that clutch pedal held in and you get a bit of that shaky knee and you're trying to find your bite, it's not the easiest thing to do. So holding your own and making sure, you know, you're definite with what you're doing is going to be key to launching these cars, because any sort of doubt or slight jolt on that clutch pedal as you try and pull away, and, you know, it can be the difference between you going into turn 1 in pole or going in 6th place.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, I did 4 years of real life racing. I actually drove these cars in real life, like you know, and oh, that's a bit of a spin for Laramie. And I believe that's actually exactly the same thing that we saw him do early on, which is why Callum Newsham went past him in qualifying. So yeah, no, I drove these things and drove real life cars for, well, Ginetta G40s as well for about 4 years. And no matter how close to getting into the car I went to the toilet, it could have been 30 seconds before jumping in the car to go to the grid, I was always sat on the grid, nerves shot, needing the toilet, and my leg was shaking. That's how bad my nerves get. And I think it's maybe not as bad in the sim world. I don't know. It depends on how much pressure you put on yourself as well, I suppose. But we've only got 5 seconds left of this qualifying. It does look like Ryan Elliott is going to take pole position, because there's not many drivers out there who are currently faster. We're looking at Weston at the moment. Now, where is Weston? He's in 9th place. It hasn't gone any quicker for him. Maxi Rurig, he's gone slow in Sector 1, a bit quicker in Sector 2. Maybe see how his lap finishes off. And Andy Dorman is about the only driver who probably is a threat to the top 5. So it's likely to say as it is that the checker flag has now dropped.
Yes, indeed. And, you know, as we just say that, Maxi Rurig on the last lap of qualifying has promoted himself up to 3rd place, just ahead of Robbie Stapleford. Look at the time difference there, Jack.
That is pretty incredible, isn't it? As I was saying that his Sector 1 was down. Imagine if he'd put a green sector for Sector 1 as well. I think he would have been making Callum Newsham sweat under the collar a little bit, but he's done fantastic to advance himself into 3rd place. And Robbie Stapleford, who took the checkered flag about half a second after Rurig, will probably be cursing the fact that he's now dropped down to 4th place. But he is still on the same row of the grid, so I'm sure he won't be that bothered. Edmondson hasn't gone quicker. He's come across the line. Alex Toft-Jones, now he needs to gain about a second if he's got any chance at coming into the top 5 realistically. He's going wide, trying to use all the circuit. A nice cut in here. And well, you said yourself, Dave, that you've done a couple of videos on how to qualify and how to drive the Mugello track. What's it going to lend to us this evening? We're going to see lots of overtakes. It's going to be more of a tactical affair. 20-minute sprint race. What are your thoughts?
So there's definitely a few key corners on the track that I would regard as being the place to line up for overtakes. There's a good few hairpins on the track, a lot of slower corners where you have to get the car down to 2nd place. And getting the maximum drive on corner exits. You know, a lot of these drivers, they'll be running traction control on the car. You get these cars too sideways or unbalanced, and it just lends to all that power cut. So it's managing that sort of throttle, getting it perfect where you're getting maximum drive. Otherwise, it'll lend yourself to being a sit and duck down the straight. But honestly, if I think the other really hard bit in the race is going to be keeping within track limits.
It does look like it's a difficult one for track limits, and I do keep saying Magello. I do apologise, it is Misano. I probably will keep making that mistake, even if I don't mean to. But there is your grid order by the looks of it. So Ryan Elliott is pole position with the 142.62. Callum Newsham less than, well, 200ths behind. With a 142.637, and Maxi Rurig, Robbie Stapleford, Max Edmondson round out the top 5, and then you've sort of got the rest, I would say. Alex Toft-Jones leading the rest in 6th place. Andy Dorman, Dan Zelos ended up, well, he's got a pretty good ping on the very right-hand side there, so maybe he just reset his internet and tried to jump on as soon as possible. Luke Weston in 9th, and rounding out the top 10 was Martin Johnson, and well, you said, Dave, that you do coach some of these drivers, Dan Zelos specifically, with 10/10 coaching. What are you expecting from those drivers then that you've been in deep contact with?
Well, we just want to see them give the best effort, really. You know, we've brought drivers up to speed as quickly as we can. You know, it tends to lend well to the drivers that struggle for time during the week. So, yeah, it's one of them things where, you know, you always want to do the best, but we'll wait and see.
We will indeed, yeah, and I believe Ryan Elliott has jumped into the comms box, but Ryan, you're probably best off. Yeah, we're going to go to the race instead, so we didn't quite catch a chat with him, but as the lights start to come on, we can start to see maybe Ryan Elliott. How smooth can he be? How calm under pressure is he going to be? Or is Callum Newsham going to launch off the line? These cars are quite difficult to launch off the line, aren't they, Dave? They're not easy cars to get going.
Yeah, you know, as I said before, the traction control can really hinder that. So this might play into part then, lads, who's got, you know, the bottle to turn that TC off and just go for it.
They are indeed. So as the lights come on, the engine notes will rise, and we will be racing for the first time here at the AOC Gaming League of Champions, powered by VRRC. And it is Ryan Elliott who's got a fantastic start into the first corner. Callum Newsham doing well as well. I think Rurig's managed to hold his 3rd place as the drivers now come through after the first complex. It's all been fairly clean, hasn't it, Dave? But it is Ryan Elliott who's kept in the lead of this race. We're having a look at Max Edmondson defending from Robbie Stapleford. Stapleford looking for that drive around the outside, but it's never going to come off out of the slow corner like that. Edmondson got a really good run out of it. Stapleford and McIntyre, 2 teammates, running 5th and 6th at the moment as Alex Toft-Jones has dropped down to 7th. Yeah,
you know, Robbie, you know, getting caught a little bit in traffic there, went for a move. Max went really defensive. As we see here, a great move there by Robbie Stapleford to get back up the inside of Max Edmondson, but Max might have the overspeed here down towards the right-hander going on the back straight. This is going to be crucial who's going to come out ahead, and first chance to see what the tour's going to actually do. If Max tucks in here behind Robbie Stapleford, we could see by the end of the straight he's going to actually get back past.
Yeah, he is indeed. It's all about the drag race now, isn't it? And how quickly he can get down into the late braking zone of not this one, but it's the next corner, isn't it? That's probably the more specific. Sorry, I've realised I've completely missed up where I'm actually looking at the track here, but there's actually 2 right-handers and then into the heavy braking zone, isn't it? And that's potentially an opportunity for overtaking, but you do have to set that up about 3 corners in advance, isn't it? Because it's relatively easy to defend going into that corner as long as you're going in the straight and single file.
Yeah, it's an incredibly hard corner to set up an overtake in, but it has to be incredibly committed as well. But it can mean, because you're on the brakes that late, trying to get the car turned in, get on the throttle out the outside of the corner, if the driver behind you does judge it well and gets the inside line into that hairpin, to try and get across the track to defend that is incredibly hard. So it could be a really good opportunity for someone to show a nose there, and it'll be job done. But as we see here, Ryan Elliott actually starting to open up a little bit of a gap here on Callum Newsham. You can see Max Edmondson starting to, you know, drop Robbie Stapleford a little bit and start to gain here onto the back of Maxi Rohrig, who's got a little bit sideways there, getting out on that straight, and you'll see that gap starting to reduce now.
Yeah, well, we were saying in qualifying, weren't we, that Robbie Elliott and Callum Newsham, they're probably going to be wanting to work together to get away from the other 2 or 3 drivers that were very close to them in qualifying. I didn't expect that it was going to be this easy, though. They've done it within about a lap or 2, haven't they? There's a half a second gap between first and second, but then after that, there's a full second between Newsham and Rurik, and you can see visibly on your screens what that means. And I think Rurik's probably going to have more of a headache looking in his rearview mirrors than he will actually trying to chase down Callum, realistically. And in fact, you can see just a glimpse in the background of that shot there. Edmondson was giving a little bit of the flash of the lights, wasn't he? He was playing a little bit of mind games. I want to get past, I want that third place. He's not really thinking about trying to catch the front two, which, to be fair, if you're looking at practice, if you're looking at qualifying, and now clearly in the race, have been the class of the field.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, Max Edmondson's just there that lap, set the fastest second sector of anyone. As Callum Newsham's in the pit, I believe this has to be for a drive-through, for possibly a jump start. That's going to be a nightmare for Callum Newsham's championship hopes here. Max Edmondson promoted up into P3 and everyone behind there. Maxi Rohrig on second. And look at the amount of breathing room now for Ryan Elliott.
Yeah, so a jump start would have been interesting because he didn't exactly get a good one, did he? It was an okay start, but it wasn't exactly like he got ahead of Ryan Elliott or anything like that into the first corner. If anything, Ryan's was so much better. But sometimes that can happen. Maybe he knew that he maybe jumped it a little bit, so he came off the throttle, and then it sort of messed up the whole rhythm of the thing. But Callum Newsham now down into 11th place. Ryan Elliott must be very pleased about that one. He's now got 2.1 second gap to Maxi Rurik, who's in turn obviously still trying to fend off from Edmondson. In fact, there we go, Edmondson going a little bit deep on the corner there, maybe trying to get a little bit of a cutback and a good run out of it, but it's not to be just yet. Rurik came really tight into that apex. He did a good job of getting out the corner as well. He's just putting his car, seems to be middle of the track at the moment. Dave, is that a bit of a tactic, or maybe is that the optimum line? What's your thinking about the driving that you're seeing in front of you?
It's very easy as a driver to over-defend. You know, you try and go too inside on a corner to block off that overtake, and it just means you're incredibly slow coming out. So actually, what Maxi's doing here, hanging middle of the road, not losing too much of that apex speed, is actually meaning that you can see Ryan Elliott just getting further and further away, even though Max Edmondson, Robbie Stapleford are all capable of doing the lap times that Ryan's currently doing. But Maxi's just doing that great job of just holding his own, not making it easy for Max to get past here, but also not meaning he's overdriving anything. You know, I haven't really seen him run wide too many times or lose the back end. He's just driving within himself, and it's currently meaning that Max Edmondson's not really getting any nearer.
Yes, I think it was Stapleford we just saw then getting a little bit wide out the final corner, wasn't he? So, as we were saying, Alex Toft-Jones, Weston Dorman, they're all setting purple lap times. Sutton, as the track starts to heat up, it's starting to rubber in. Those guys are in the slipstream, aren't they? So they're potentially getting a couple of miles an hour down the straight quicker, but they're all starting to improve on their lap times, that's for sure. And, well, Elliott, he said that he's not getting any closer to Elliott. What's going to be his thinking now? It's a 20-minute race, really. We're slightly surprised we haven't seen more sort of all-out action, I suppose. More people launching themselves off the inside, around the outside, or anything like that. But the Packers seem to have sort of, apart from the one we're looking at right now, the fight we're having a look at, but they seem to have gapped themselves slightly. Are they all trying to bed themselves into this race, maybe? Bed themselves into the championship? Because obviously, we were talking before, obviously the Ginetta Super Cup is only one of 4 of the championships in the League of Champions. And that's going to be, a lot of the drivers that are here tonight are going to be wanting to be here for all 4 of those 4 championships.
Yeah, exactly that, because any driver who enters all 4 championships also gets entered into a draw for a set of brand new OBP hydraulic pedals. So there's almost an incentive there to want to compete in all 4 championships, which is, you know, a great opportunity for anyone who, you know, maybe doesn't see themselves as being a proper front runner, or maybe in you know, the running for one of the top prizes, and yet can get put into a draw for still coming away with a £1,200 set of eSport pedals. So yeah, always want to try and give people, you know, a chance to win something, even if they don't think they're up there on the lap times. Yeah,
I might just call out Rich Hayden and say maybe the commentators can get involved in that as well. You know, I wouldn't mind, Rich, if you fancy being No, I'm kidding, obviously. I'm happy enough with the work. But Callum Newsham in 10th place, made it 1 position, and it looks like he's trying to chase down 9th as well. What do you reckon his chances of maybe trying to push through the order now? What's his best opportunity? Because obviously there's a top 10 reverse grid. If he doesn't hit anybody now, i.e. the person he's trying to overtake here, Johnson, he's got a good chance of being, you know, in the top 10. Is it a case of he's going to have to just settle and try and do as best he can for race number 2? Or is he going to have... Oh, that's a big slide of the rear end, wasn't it? As he was trying really hard to get past Johnson. They're actually having a really nice little fight here. I think Newsham's probably hoping he would get out of the way a little bit quicker. But what is this hopes? Is he going to try and just chase down as high as possible, or is he going to be a bit more conservative? Maybe play the reverse grid game. I've seen drivers do that before. You know, play the fact that they maybe want to be on the first or second row of the grid for race number 2 and try and pick up the win, knowing Ryan Elliott will be having to start from 10th place.
Yeah, you know what? It's always a difficult one when you've got a drive-through or you've been spun out and you end up going through the pack. It's always in your head. Well, do you want to push through or do you want to hang back and get that reverse grid? But I think with Callum's pace, you know, there was still a good 15 minutes left of the race to battle through and gain them positions. And let's face it, unless if there's a problem with Ryan Elliott or Maxi, the chance of Callum managing to get back up here onto the podium is very, very slim. Just with the lap times being that close. But for me personally, I'll be pressing on trying to get as many positions back as possible. And then knowing going into the second race, I'm still going to be ahead of the people who's finished on the podium in race 1.
You know, realistically, he's got 4 seconds to catch up to Andy Dorman, then he's got 3.5 seconds to Weston, and then 2.5 seconds. It's a big gap, basically. It's half the track, in essence, that he's got to try and catch up to even the top 5. And we were saying that Ryan Elliott is not a man who wants him to be caught. He's put in a purple sector 2 on the previous lap, green sector 3. Robbie Stapleford's actually gone and put in a purple sector 1. So all the drivers are still getting faster and faster, aren't they, as they sort of inch towards those qualifying times. To be honest, I think Ryan Elliott's put a 42.8. That's about 3 tenths off his qualifying time. Maybe 4 tenths off, sorry, his qualifying time. Maxi Rurig, obviously, he's 43 dead. In second place. He's still got Max Edmondson for company though, Dave, hasn't he? He's not really been able to shake him. He's not really been able to catch Ryan, although I sort of feel like Ryan maybe is controlling this race more than he is pushing really hard, maybe risking getting the back end out and making a silly mistake, knowing full well that Rurik has Edmondson for company. But what is Edmondson's thought process here? I would probably say that he's got to try and push hard, hasn't he? Especially in the last 5 minutes. But up until then, I reckon he's going to be quite happy sitting here in 3rd place, isn't he? He's already gained 1 place from Newsham, having that penalty. He's in the, you know, he's not under that much threat from Stableford behind because he's a second back. He's in a nice little bit of slipstream. Do you reckon he's just biding his time until he can really start pushing the car, keeping the tyres nice and warm, but in that peak condition for as long as possible?
Quite possibly. I mean, if I was in this scenario now, I'd be watching Maxi. You know, he's driving very well, but trying to sort of weigh up where in the sectors of the track that, you know, Max has really got the advantage. Is he slowing to a certain hairpin? Is he running a certain corner slightly wide every lap? You know, he's got that time left in the race to sort of calculate what sort of driving Maxi's doing, and that's when you need to pounce. At the point when you regard the driver in front as at his weakest point, that's when you can pounce on him, that's when you can get the job done. So, you know, Max is, you know, for all he's relatively young in age, you know, he's got a lot of experience with go-karts, the same as Robbie Stapleford behind him. You know, these boys are young, but they're not, you know, young to racecraft. It's been taught into them from day one, and, you know, Max will sit there until his time comes. You know, you see he's starting to chip away now, it's down to 4 tenths, but as soon as Maxi makes a mistake, Max is going to be there to bite him.
It's all going to be about the pressure, isn't it? And how well Maxi can sort of, I don't know, stave it off, absorb it, I suppose. How much of a sponge can he be until he does make that one mistake? And it's whether or not Max is then close enough, obviously, like you said, to really launch an attack and make sure that he takes advantage of that one small mistake. Because so far, to be fair to Maxi, we've had about 12 minutes and he hasn't made one yet, has he? Which is pretty good going. Obviously, a 20-minute race. These drivers will all be fairly used to much bigger timed events, aren't they? You know, at least an hour or so for a lot of endurance drivers. That's the sort of thing that these guys take part in, especially, say, the iRacing 24 hours, 12-hour events and stuff like that. I'm guessing a lot of these drivers probably take part in them as well. So a 20-minute race is very much achievable for them in terms of, you know, making consistent laps, compiling them together. They can quite easily do practice stints of 20 minutes, can't they, to try and get as many lap times as close as possible together. Callum Newsham, speaking of close as possible together, is overtaking Dorman, and he's done it into turn number 1, and he's done it nice and clean as well, so it's 1 more place gained. So in the second race, he will now be pretty much starting on the second row of the grid. That's going to be probably what's going through his head right now.
Yeah, definitely. You know what you're talking about there with it being a 20-minute race. It makes it really intense. You know, as you said, a lot of championships these days, you know, the last 40 minutes, an hour. I mean, I won't even talk about the Nürburgring 24 because mine wasn't exactly a happy experience with that. But yeah, for me, you know, 20 minutes, it's almost a different mindset. It's a sprint race. You know, you've got to almost come out the blocks and get their moves done because, you know, we're commentating at the moment. 20 minutes feels like, you know, there's enough time to weigh things up lap after lap. As a driver, honestly, 20 minutes goes past so quickly when you're trying to weigh up where to do moves. You've got to remember, you know, if you're following a driver for 4 laps going, right, he's slow into that corner, 4 laps into a 20-minute race, there's straight away a quarter of your race distance done. So it's all about getting the job done quite quickly, you know, sort of jumping on opportunities as soon as you see them rather than, you know, waiting your time and going, well, maybe that's a bit risky.
Yeah, you're not wrong, but to be fair to Ryan Elliott, it probably feels like a very long race, doesn't it? Because he's sat in the lead and he's thinking, oh, come on, this must be the last lap, 6 minutes to go. What on earth are we doing here? That's certainly how I felt whenever I was in a half-decent position, whenever I was racing. But yeah, it's time for Maxi to sort of absorb that, like I said. He hasn't really sort of made any mistakes so far, but speaking of the sort of AOC Gaming League of Champions, obviously making mistakes, absorbing pressure and all those sort of things, it's not just the Ginetta Super Cup we've got coming up, is it? Over the next 4 weeks it is, obviously, but then there's a small break before we're into the next one. And you have to be, it's the touring cars next, then it's the GT4s, and then it's finished off on a JCW Mini Championship. What, you know, how challenging is that as a driver, Dave? Because you have to not only know the Ginettas like the back of your hand, you then jump straight into a front-wheel drive touring car, have to learn that, and then you're straight into a rear-wheel drive GT4, and there's a lot to be going on with, isn't there?
Yeah, you know, it works in your favour and works against you at the same time, you know. A lot of drivers have certain disciplines that they'll feel they're better at, and that's the whole idea of League of Champions, you know. It gives that opportunity to compete in a league of 4 disciplines, but that are varied. So if you're a front-wheel drive man, then there's half the amount of championships in front-wheel drive as there is rear-wheel drive. So it's all about sort of, you know, getting your head around driving certain cars and being really good in the cars that you are good in. As there we go, Max there with quite an aggressive move there up the inside of Maxi. But that's what I was on about before. Max showed his nose straight away into that hairpin he was going through, and you saw Maxi was already loaded up on the outside of the corner, and he couldn't get his car any tighter to properly defend it.
Yeah, well, I think you were being overly polite there. That was more than aggressive, I would say. But it's, you know, it is what it is. We do have stewards for this exact reason. You know, it'll probably be looked at afterwards. But you're right, Max was always going to show his nose if the mistake or even half a door was open. We're into the last 4 minutes. The thing is, Max has done that move now, but he's got 4 minutes to defend it against someone who, let's say, he didn't treat exactly politely going through that corner, did he? So I can expect Maxi, he'll probably have, you know, not forgotten it, but moved past it and thought, right, okay, now we just have to overtake him again, try and get that 3rd place back. But it's going to be interesting to see how these two spice up over the next 2 laps. But it's not actually, to be fair to him, I'm being unfair to one driver. Stapleford is in 4th place here, and he's probably smelling blood in the water, isn't he? Because he sees that these 2 drivers are trying to maybe have a little bit of a ding-dong between themselves. Maybe I can sling up the inside. Maybe I can become 2nd place all of a sudden. He's probably going to be biding his time and just hoping for that opportunity to come his way.
Yeah, definitely that. You know, Robbie Stapleford's probably looked at this thing, and, you know, things are starting to hot up now. This is where I can sort of jump on something if there's a, you know, a little argy-bargy here and there, and you can actually see Robbie Stapleford's closed right onto this pack now. As you said before, Maxi's not going to be happy with that move that Max did on him going into this hairpin. He's going to be thinking, you know what, if I get close enough, Max, you better watch out, because I'm probably going to return a bit of that favour and, you know, give it equally as hard back. But unfortunately, Max He's actually starting to pull away. He's nearly over half a second as Callum Newson's up the inside, doing almost exactly the same move as what Max Edmondson did. You saw there struggled on exit. Maybe that was a bit of that traction control cut on the power that I was on about. And this is actually for 7th place. Up the inside, not quite. Actually, I thought he was going to have a second bite of the cherry there, Jack. Up the inside of Luke Weston. You know, this is where Callum you know, it's damage limitation, isn't it, really? He needs to try and get the job done past Luke Weston, and that'll really help him. But actually, as we see there, a little bit of a connection issue with Luke Weston. Maybe that's why Callum's been a little bit hesitant here, going, it might not be worth taking the chance for that amount of point gap. Make sure I get the good reverse grid and get me head down and go.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, you've heard our opinions on the Edmondson-Rurik incident, overtake, shall we say. Do let us know what your opinions are in the chat as well, because obviously you might think that me and Dave are chatting out of something. You may want your opinion shared as well, so be sure to engage in the chat as much as you would like. Edmondson and Rurik still going at each other, and I tell you what, Stableford has got the prime seat in the house. 3.2 seconds though is the gap to our leader, who we haven't really mentioned that much in the last 10 minutes, Ryan Elliott, and that's because he's been a bit boring, hasn't he? He's just got into the lead and has just driven away with it. He hasn't really had any dramas that we've seen. He hasn't dropped time. He just keeps putting in purple sectors. He's done everything exactly right, and as soon as Callum Newsham came into the pit to serve that penalty, we sort of had that idea, didn't we, that Ryan may well pull the gap. And as he's about to go across the line to start the final lap of the race, it has been a pretty superb showing, hasn't it, by our race leader?
It really has, you know. He hasn't really put a foot wrong. He didn't, he soaked up the pressure fantastically at the start of the race, got his head down, didn't really lose too much time there, and he's sort of aware. As we see there, Callum Newsham, this is what I was on about. This is a nightmare. So he needs to get this back on the road, make sure he stays within that 10th place, and that'll mean he's okay for the reverse grid. But we did see Luke Weston there was struggling a bit with his internet connection, just meant his car was jumping around, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's what caused that collision there with Callum Newsham. But, I don't want to put my neck on the block for the second time, but I reckon that's probably what happened.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll get a little bit of feedback from maybe in the Discord chat or on the YouTube chat or anywhere else that we may find the information. Maybe Luke gives us a bit of a bell to tell us if his internet is playing up a little bit. But as we say, Callum Newsham is still on for the top 10 reverse grid. He will be on the front row of the grid now, actually, thanks to the fact that he's in ninth. He'll be starting in second place. As we're starting to round out the last couple of corners. Apologies here. They're still going at it, aren't they, these three drivers? But they're not really close enough to make any kind of meaningful move now, are they? They've gapped themselves by about half a second to 0.8 of a second, and I think they're probably just going to settle for the race points, aren't they? I think that's probably the wiser thing to do than maybe to try and enact vengeance, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Elliott's definitely going to sit where he wants to be sat, isn't he? But, I mean, yeah, Maxie's sat here behind Max Edmondson. This is where he needs to have composure. He needs to just keep his head in the game. It was maybe an unfair move there, what Max Edmondson did. But he needs to bite back in the second race, and might see him get his elbows out on Max Edmondson. With it being a reverse grid, you got to remember Max will be starting then behind him in the race result. So yeah, we might see a role reversal here, and might have a bit of argy-bargy maybe, but we'll see.
We may well see, yeah, but we can confirm now as the drivers cross the finishing line that Ryan Elliott took the first race victory, and I believe we will be able to have a chat with our race victor as well while he's on the cool-down lap. Max Edmondson in second place, Rurik in third, rounding out the podium. Robbie Stapleford in fourth, and Jack McIntyre in fifth position. I think we'll be able to drag in our race victor, Dave, as soon as he's available to us. I think he's just... no, that was Rich running away. And in that fact, there we go. Ryan Elliott, congratulations on that race victory. We have to keep the interview nice and short, but you must be very pleased with that. What is probably a slightly boring race for you?
I mean, I'm not complaining that it was a boring race. I'm absolutely over the moon, honestly. Paul was really tight. Sadly, on the start, Callum, I don't think he knew that there wasn't a clutch in this car, so he put it into first and slightly jumped. Ended up getting a drive-through penalty, but yeah, quiet race for me. Fastest lap by 2.5 tenths. It doesn't get much better than that, really. Perfect start.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that would make it slightly better, wouldn't it? And that's to do exactly the same in the race that you're going into. Now, we've obviously seen you can do hot laps, you can do qualifying. What's your racing like? What's your hopes and ambitions going into race number 2, starting in 10th place?
Just careful, consistent points, but at the same time, I need to maximise, obviously, no success ballast this round, so I just need to try and get as far forward as I can.
Well, that's true, especially as we can tell you that Callum Newsham, who does seem to be the driver that's probably as close to you on pace, finished in 9th position. He had a bit of an off at the end of that race, so he'll be starting in 2nd. He'll be likely to be one of the favourites for the victory, so it's just all about getting those points forward for you, isn't it?
Absolutely. I know he'll be an absolute flyer off the start, but as long as I can finish in this race better than he did in the last one, I'll be okay.
Good stuff. Well, good luck, Ryan. We'll let you go because I think there's only a minute or two before the start of the second race. And in fact, he's already gone. So there we go. Dave, that one's probably a little bit calmer than we were expecting, to be honest, for the first race of the season. Reverse grid now, though. It all can be kicked up, can't it?
It can indeed. And you know what? After that race one, you're right in what you said. You know, there wasn't any ballast there. In fact, sorry, it was what Ryan said. There wasn't any ballast there. It was all a grid based on their sort of actual race sort of pace, if you like. This time, top 10 reversed. Everything's all jumbled up. Drivers, you know, are next to drivers that they haven't raced with yet. And, yeah, you know, we've got, you know, Newsham on the front row of the grid. You've got to sort of put the neck on the line and say he's probably looking quite good for the win for this race.
Yeah, well, realistically, he's probably one of the favourites, isn't he? I don't think there's any getting around that. And like Ryan Elliott said, all he really needs to focus on is making sure that he finishes better than 9th place, because that's where Callum finished in the last one. And he'll be sitting pretty in the championship, that's for sure. So as we're about to jump into the second race, it's Mick Sutton on pole position. At the moment, it's saying Kenny Press in 2nd place, but I think that's supposed to be Callum Newsham. But as the lights are coming, oh, there is Callum Newsham, sorry, and it's Johnson on the front of the grid. My bad, I was looking at the wrong timing tower. As the lights start to come on, though, the engine notes will rise, and for the second time this evening, we will be racing on a Tuesday night here on the AOC Gaming League of Champions, powered by VRRC. A puff of smoke in the background as all the cars get underway. Callum Newsham's already looking up the inside of the first corner of Johnson. Johnson has to wield as Luke Weston, Newsham's old rival, shall we say, from race number 1, slots into 3rd place. Dorman in 4th, Toff Jones in 5th, McIntyre 6th, Rurig is in 7th place, 1 ahead of Stapleford. Edmondson's got ahead of Stapleford as well into 8th, 9th, and then Ryan Elliott in 10th. But there's a whole gaggle of cars trying to make it cleanly through the first sector, the first complex of this lap. They're going side by side for the 2nd place, Johnson and Weston, as well as side by side for 8th place and pretty much everywhere else. But it's Callum Newsham in the lead by 1.3 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let you get your breath back there, but Callum Newsham, what a start. Exactly what he needed. You know, he needs to get these laps down. We see Ryan Elliott there incredibly late on the brakes, nearly sideswiping Max Edmondson. This is going to end up going 3 abreast into the back corner.
It is indeed, yeah. There's a lot of drivers picking up damage as well. Rurig is one of them. Stapleford, Edmondson, and Stapleford again. So there is a little bit of damage going on here, there, and everywhere. But they're going 2 by 2, aren't they? What was this that Ryan Elliott was saying? That he just wants clean, consistent points. Well, that late braking didn't seem like clean and consistent point thinking to me, did it? He screamed that I want to get through as quickly as possible. Stapleford still on the inside. And I tell you what, that's Toff Jones and Weston going neck and neck as well for top 5 positions. Oh my days, how are they going to get out of this one alive? Dave, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is many cars going into many corners, all side by side. We'll see here, I believe this is Jack McIntyre really putting the pressure on the back of Luke Weston here. As we see out the back of the corner there, Max Edmondson getting a little sideways by the side of Maxi Rohrig. Now this here down into turn 1, will we see any favours here from Maxi, or will he get his elbows out? This is going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, it is, as they go 2 by 2. Hurrah, hurrah, we hear the crowd saying. Elliott goes up the inside of one, he goes around the outside of another. And I tell you what, they're going so quickly, it's actually pretty hard to tell where exactly everyone is. But it is, at the moment, you run down to the top 10 is Newsham, Johnson, Toff Jones, Weston in 4th, McIntyre 5th, Dorman in 6th place, Edmondson, Rurig, Elliott and Sutton. And now Stapleford, as Sutton drops down outside the top 10, Stapleford makes his way through, and it's the first time I think I've seen every single car now finally in single file, but Callum Newsom's just driven away with it at the moment. 4.4 seconds to the good. We said he was one of the favourites, and he's certainly showing that he's stretching his legs here early on in the second race of the evening. He clearly wants to right what he probably feels is a bit of a wrong in the fact that he made that mistake on the start line of race number 1. But McIntyre running in fourth here as two drivers launching themselves at the inside of each other, Edmondson and Weston. Now Edmondson probably is right in thinking he's got the pace on Weston, but whether or not Weston's internet can hold out so we don't see a big crash is probably more important. Here we go, on board with Edmondson going up the inside. Weston's still on the outside. McIntyre going slightly wider. He hasn't defended it, and Edmondson goes up the inside and into fourth position. He's taken 2 cars. Can he hold on to that position? Yes, he can. 2 cars in the space of about 10 seconds there, Dave.
Yeah, that was a better move that time, wasn't it? Really showing that, you know, the difference in speed through there is everything. You know, Jack Mack didn't really make his job too easy there, but it was what I said before. You get a driver that gets up the inside, your car's going that fast, you can't get back across the track to try and defend it. The car's already leaning on the corner, and you know, you can't do anything about it. This is where Maxi Rohrig really needs to press on, needs to realise Max Edmondson's starting to get through the pack now. Ryan Elliott was really quick in race 1. Look who's in front of Maxi. Go with him. Get through the pack. You know, there's still a really good points haul on offer here for Maxi, even though he finds himself down in 9th place.
Oh, big hit there up ahead. That was Dorman and Weston. And Elliott tries to squeeze through, and he's done just that, hasn't he? He's got the move done. So Elliott up to 6th position. I'll tell you what, he wasn't exactly quick. He had to charge through a lot of drivers, but he did fantastically well there to avoid a big incident, because there was a big incident on the card there, Dave. There was no doubt about it, but luckily all the drivers did really well. Todd Jones hasn't done so well though as he goes into the gravel. Please don't rejoin in front on the racing line. He's done just about enough to keep out of the way. Johnson's still fighting, but look at who is that. It's Edmondson, already up to 2nd place, or well, verging on 2nd place. There he has got the move done now. Johnson, McIntyre, Elliott are now your top 5. Stapleford's down in 7th place. Ruhrig's all the way down in 8th. So Ruhrig and Stapleford haven't been able to try and take any kind of advantage. And in fact, they're still behind Todd Jones, who we just saw going really wide early on. McIntyre up the inside now of Johnson, who seems to be bleeding positions. But it is now Callum Newsom 8 seconds ahead of Edmondson. McIntyre, then Johnson. And Johnson tries to fight back.
You know what, that was a great move there by Martin to try and get the undercut back there. He's still on the back of Jack Mack here. This job's not done by Jack, but we can see Max Edmondson's got his head down here a little bit. He's starting to get that gap pulled away from Jack. You know, Callum's up the road. He's nearly 7 seconds up the road from Max. That's going to be a really tall order for Max to put laps in to close down the gap that much, when realistically, let's face it, in qualifying the laps are separated by 1/10 of a second. You know, we don't want to see it, but it would take, you know, something really quite nasty to happen to Callum Newsom here to throw away this lead. Max Edmondson 2nd place. We see there Ryan Elliott. You know, he said he didn't want to get his hands too dirty, but I tell you what, he's managed to get himself up into 3rd or 4th place already. Martin Johnson getting a bit sideways. Alex Todd Jones coming back through. Bobby Stiltford and Maxi Rohrig not quite making that momentum that they needed to, but still 13 minutes after this race, we know they've got great pace. Alex Todd Jones getting a slight bump there. I believe that was from Martin Johnson. Here's Maxi Rohrig yet again getting stuck behind the 2 cars in front, whereas Robbie Stapleford gets through.
Todd Jones, that was actually the same corner that he went off a lap ago, and already he's going sideways again. I think he must have a bit of rear suspension damage, because every time he leans on the brakes, he seems to be going sideways. The rear keeps stepping out, and he's doing all he can just to save his car from flying off the track and into a tyre barrier. But if he's not careful, he'll fly into the side of another car. Let's have a look as he tries to hit the brakes from the rear of his car. It's not stepping out just yet, but to be fair, they haven't slammed the brakes on. No, it's... Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know what. Maybe he keeps getting hit, I'm not entirely sure. But Alex Todd Jones in 6th place is really having his... he's having to work hard for it, shall we say. Maxi Ruhrig, up to 7th position. And you're right, Callum Newsom's checked out. I mean, he's already off to Mugello to try and practice for next week, isn't he? He's that far ahead.
Well, it's exactly what he needed, but the thing that he didn't need was Ryan Elliott to make great progress here. He's already up into 4th place. Remember, Callum Newsom finished in 9th place last race, so this is sort of damage limitation for Callum. It's exactly what he needed. What he needs is Ryan Elliott to stop making progress. But we can see he's already making ways onto the back of Jack Mack here, and with the pace that they had at the last race, I don't think there'll be too much of a fight here.
No, exactly. I think you're right, Newsham. All he can do, really, he can't do anything about the first race. All he can do is try and win this race as comfortably as possible, and just hope that Ryan Elliott obviously drops points, and maybe the next coming round, Newsham maybe try and get on the sim to do some practicing. But as Elliott launches one at the inside, that's a pretty late and brave move. But I would say that McIntyre, you're right, Dave, wasn't really looking to defend it that hard, was he? Because he probably could have seen that one coming a while off.
Yeah, there really wasn't too much defensive there. But actually, as we say that, Jack Mack with a very late break, but that's going to allow him to get on the power really well. Now he's close enough here to be right in that slipstream, and we're going to see any sort of gain here by Jack Mack. Is there going to be a late committed move into this hairpin?
Yeah, as we're just having a look at the drivers take the first couple of apexes, it looks like McIntyre's wanting to get involved, doesn't it? But it's whether or not he's risking launching one up the inside of... Oh, I thought Elliott maybe had just lost it a little bit there with the back end. We managed to just about keep it onto the tarmac, keep it all in check, and keep it in a straight line more crucially as well. So it is Elliott still in third place, McIntyre in fourth, Stapleford in fifth, who again has just sort of caught up to the back of a little battle that maybe he didn't think he was probably too involved in, but it's going to be his turn to try and get past McIntyre now, who's, to be fair to McIntyre, he's done a good job, hasn't he? He's been around that sort of top end of the spectrum in fourth place, but it's whether, in fact, on my timing tower actually it says Robbie Stapleford is in fourth place. Has there been on the stream it says he's in it says Stapleford's in fifth, but on my online timing it says he's in fourth, and McIntyre's not there at all, so I'm not sure if maybe there's been a bit of an issue with the timing tower on my internet, but at the moment on track it certainly is McIntyre in fourth place.
Yeah, McIntyre is in fourth, just a little timing tower glitch here, but I don't think Jack Mack's probably not going to make Robbie's job here too hard. They both race under the same banner for Zancho Simsport, and Robbie realistically has a little bit more pace than Jack. Whether Jack thinks if Robbie gets through, can he actually get onto the back of Ryan, is probably going to be the telltale thing. We're seeing British touring cars where sometimes a driver will let their teammate through, and if they don't make headways onto the driver in front, then there's an exchange back again before the finish. So will we see that maybe, Jack?
Yeah, or maybe unless there's a red flag and then the driver who gave the position up never gets actually to go back past. I feel like sorry, that hits a little bit close to home. Callum Niche, Todd Jones trying to get past Maxi Rurig though. Rurig's gone past. Now Rurig clearly got good pace as well because he finished in third place in that first race, but at the moment Todd Jones looks like he's been trying to keep up, and this is almost the best way to learn, isn't it, Dave? You're obviously a driver coach, but sometimes the best way to learn is just following a driver who you know is quicker than you, not like 2 seconds a lap quicker than you, but maybe one that's half a second, so you can just learn a few things. You can see when they roll off the brake, you can see how much speed they can roll into a corner, when they do their turn in, when they get back on the power. It's all very interesting, isn't it? And it's the best way of learning sometimes. Yeah,
I mean, I had Dan Zelos in earlier this week, trying to learn this track, and straight away he says, Dave, I just don't know whether they're getting an extra second and a half up the road from, and it's quite simply using every inch of the track. As I said, these red and white curbs are the extension. You can see the drivers running nice and wide, but in the braking area here, they want to run right out onto that red and white curb to brake. If you're trying to stay within the white limits, the white line limits, you're then losing a lot of potential for opening a corner up. As soon as you do that, you take time off your lap without really even trying, because you've quite simply just got more track to use. As you see Robbie Stapleford with the move up the inside, I would say Jack Mack there didn't make that too hard for him. I think he knew Robbie had a little bit more speed there. We'll see whether that is the case, whether or not Jack Mack here tries to fight back at him.
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one though, isn't it? Because you'd have thought if that was the case, and they did believe that Stapleford actually had a bit more pace about him, that they would have released him earlier to try and keep on to the back of Elliott. But they've held, in essence, they may have held up Stapleford for 2 laps, and then obviously Elliott has driven away somewhat. But having said that, McIntyre was right up the rear bumper of his teammate there, wasn't he? But he's just been dropped a touch. May have been the slipstream that came into advantage there. Elliott really pushing the track limits, like you were just saying. kicking up the dirt, isn't he? And it is all about how many inches you can get out, how much. Because an extra a foot going into a corner and then an extra foot going out of a corner, that could be 2 miles an hour difference, can't it? And when you're going down a straight and you're 2 miles an hour quicker coming out of a corner going onto a main straight, that carries a lot of time, doesn't it, into the next corner?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that, as we see Martin Johnson there with a little nibble on the back of Luke Weston. Luke Weston's internet seems a little bit better now, so it's going to be easier to tell where his car is on track. It's still got a bit of what we call that rubber banding effect, where it goes forward and backwards as you get close to the car. The thing that I'm interested to see is Maxi Rohrig here in 6th place. He's got quite a nice little gap to 7th place, a gap to 5th. This is his time. We've seen he's got the lap time in the car. Can he, pull out the best lap, get an extra point there? He's in 6th place, probably not quite as high up the board as what his pace would sort of determine. But, if we see it, he might have that chance to put fastest lap in, get that extra point, and, really help his championship position.
Yeah, speaking of fastest laps and everything like that, Callum Newsham has just put a purple Sector 2 together, but Ryan Elliott put a purple Sector 1 together, so the times are falling away. Rurik, if we're looking at his times, he's currently going slower than he has done before. Elliott has done a purple Sector 1, as we said, but he's also green Sector 2, so I think we're seeing a fastest lap about to appear on the timing tower for Stapleford. But Callum Newsham, he gained about 8 seconds, didn't he, of a gap. It's now down to 7.8. That's not in the slightest worrying him, is it? He's currently very much enjoying his drive around Misano in the sunset as Ryan Elliott does come across the line. It's slightly down on the Sector 3, and in fact it may well have been invalidated on the Sector 3 actually. Yeah, Callum Newsham actually still holds that best lap of the race of 142.6. So that's dangerously close to his qualifying pace actually, wasn't it? I think he did a 142.5 just about in his qualifying lap, but so it's clearly he can do it in a race as well as the qualifying for 15 minutes. But you're right, Rurik in 6th position. He's got a long way to catch up, but he has got the pace in him. He's already gained about half a second on McIntyre, and to be honest, Todd Jones doesn't seem to be pressuring him too much at all either.
Yeah, you know what? I hadn't actually noticed that. The race really is on here. Maxi Rohrig really making headway towards the back of Jack Mark, and he's bringing Alex Toth Jones with him. So I tell you what, the race is not finished yet. We could see Maxi making a possible 5th place finish here, maybe even P4, depending on what Robbie does. But yeah, Maxi's definitely still got the car under him. His lap times are still impressive. But I tell you what, Callum Newsham with the lap times he's doing, I don't think I'll be going that hard if it was me, Jack, putting times in like that when you've got a gap to 2nd by that much.
Yeah, realistically, his last lap time, not even his best one, his last lap time, 42.8, would have been good enough for 4th position on qualifying. So the fact he's pushing that hard, even with that 8-second gap, I just don't think he likes having the gap less than 8 seconds. I think that annoys him. He must, no, I want more, I want that 8 seconds. But you're right, Rurik is catching up on McIntyre, and it just begs the question slightly, isn't it? Because Stapleford now is 1.3 seconds or higher, actually, 1.7 seconds ahead of McIntyre. It was a bit of sort of team orders. I'll let me through. I've got a bit more pace, a bit more like Lando Norris on Ricciardo style thing. Why didn't they release him earlier to try and keep with Elliott? Because Elliott has now driven away slightly. Yeah, it's all those questions that maybe they can think further down the line. Because obviously it's only the first round of the championship. Maybe they're thinking, oh, we'll see who has got the ultimate pace here at Misano. And if Stapleford is in a better opportunity for a championship position going into the Imola or somewhere like that, maybe those orders will come in a bit quicker.
Yeah, for me, you've touched on it there. It is the first round of the championship. Yes, there's only 4 rounds in this championship, but that doesn't mean to say that there isn't enough time to sort of weigh up what Jack's potential is. He might be faster at other tracks, which I think is probably going to be the case. This is really quite a difficult track that regards quite a lot of seat time. And on the practice servers, Jack's done very little, whereas Robbie's done quite a lot. When it goes to a track like Imola or somewhere like that, that's a lot more familiar. That's where we might see the tables turn, where the pace is a lot more similar. And, Jack's probably wanting to keep his championship hopes alive, regarding it being, a relatively short championship.
Yeah, I think embarrassingly, I haven't got it written down, which is a complete horrifically commentator faux pas here. But did I see Portimao on the calendar as well for the championship?
Yeah, so Misano this week, Mugello next week, Imola the week after, and Portimao, which for me, you know, on a simulator is a fantastic track, but you know, is definitely on the bucket list for a track to drive in real life, because you know the undulation there and going around there in, you know, quite a nice rear-wheel drive fast car would just be unbelievable. But yeah, Portimao last round, you know, is the deciding round of the championship for GT4. Really long straights on it, very technical track. It's definitely going to be set for being a hell of a round finisher.
Definitely is, isn't it? I think it's come on a lot of people's radars, obviously, since jumping onto the F1 calendar, hasn't it, for the last 2 years? And to be honest, it provided some pretty thrilling racing in that. And I would actually rather F1 go back to more actual tracks rather than random street circuits that pay the most money. And I think Portimao is right up there on my list with Imola to reappear more often. And I'm all for it being on championship calendars like the League of Champions and other sim ones as well, because we just don't see it enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely that. We do try and mix our championships up with, you know, tracks that you wouldn't necessarily see on other esports or championship pages, but that's not to say we don't also chuck the slightly more familiar tracks in, because obviously, you know, when you're trying to learn a new track, you know, it takes a lot of time. So if you've got a championship just made up of foreign tracks that no one knows, you know, it takes some of the joy out of if you're having to practice that hard to learn tracks. But you know, we try and do a nice balance of half and half, and it keeps things really interesting.
It definitely does, yeah. Speaking of keeping it interesting, it's actually only a minute left to the end of the race, isn't it? I think Mr. Newsham must be coming towards. In fact, there we go. He's just started the final lap of the race now as Callum Newsham. He's going into the first and second corner, the first complex, shall we say. Edmondson still in second place, quite a way ahead of Ryan Elliott, it has to be said, who's just starting the final lap now. But to be honest, we haven't mentioned him that much, have we? And it's a lot like Ryan Elliott's first race, really. He hasn't really been mentioned because he hasn't had that much to do. He hasn't been overtaking. As soon as he got into the race lead, that was pretty much it, wasn't it? But again, like Ryan Elliott, the first race, there's a lot of parallels here, as you can tell. There is, he hasn't put a foot wrong. It's not dropped under 8 seconds by a drastic enough margin to think that he's not just controlling the pace or he's just not pushing the car as hard as he can. He's just been, chilling, enjoying his time around Misano and enjoying the fact that he's probably on for a race victory.
Yeah, exactly that. And, I think it's probably a case of Callum Newsham's thought, I need to pull this back. I need to get the damage limitation here in race 2 because it was, wasn't my finest race 1. As we heard there, Ryan Elliott actually said it was due to the fact of the clutch issue, and these cars being, basically as soon as you select first gear, it starts to crawl. So, a case of clutch wasn't quite on point there for race 1. He's made up for it in race 2, but crucially, Ryan Elliott there sat in P3. Going to come away with the championship lead after this round. Max Edmondson there, whether we see clerk officials looking at the move that he did on Maxi Rohrig there, it's going to lend itself to being quite a close championship straight away from round 1.
It is indeed, yeah, but round 2 here at Misano sees Callum Newsham take the checkered flag with a flash of the lights. He'll be very happy with that, making amends for the first race. And don't worry, Callum, I'll tell you the story about my first ever race starting as G55. It wasn't exactly pretty, but I'll save that for another week, I think. Edmondson goes into second place. Ryan Elliott comes across the line in third, but more importantly, as Dave said, with the championship lead straight away, he is the leader. He will have ballast going into Mugello. To keep an eye out on that one when we mention it next time out. Stableford and McIntyre round out the top 5. Rurik never really got close enough to try and put a press on for the top 5, as you see. Andy Carroll finishing just behind Sutton there, and Mick Sutton, sorry. So good first 2 rounds, really. Dave, I don't think there was anything, not excited about that. The race 2, the first half of race 2 was absolutely thrilling, wasn't it? It looked like there was going to be a massive crash at some point, but to be fair to all these drivers, it came home really clean.
Yeah, it did indeed, and it was quite an impressive race to see. Actually, Callum keep his composure, get his head down and drive away, but also, for Ryan Elliott to turn around and say he wasn't going to get his elbows out, he certainly got his way through the grid quick enough.
He did indeed, and in fact, speaking of Callum, he is actually in the commentator's booth as we speak to have a little bit of a chat to us on his cooldown lap. Congratulations, Callum. Much like Ryan Elliott in the first race, that one looked a tad dull for you.
Yeah, it was a bit, but it's definitely better than race 1 anyway.
Yeah, talk us through what happened on race 1 then. Was it just a fact that you sort of just blipped it into first gear and it just started moving instantly?
Well, yeah, I forgot these cars don't use a clutch, so I was holding down the clutch and revving out in first gear, and then I just creeped forward, and I was like, oh, crap.
Yeah, a bit gutting that one for you. There was a bit of a recovery drive going on for you, wasn't it? Obviously, it looked like it was pretty hard work, but then you had a spin. We didn't actually catch what happened in this. Oh, we caught what happened in that spin just then going into the pits, but we didn't catch what happened in the first race. What was it at the end there?
I can't remember who it was, but they were lagging like mad, so I was quite far away from him. Next minute, I'm into the side of him and spinning around, so yeah, right. A bit unfortunate that.
Yeah, I think that was Luke Weston. We did see him sort of rubber banding slightly, disappearing in and out of existence and all that sort of thing. You're in second place in the championship now, I believe, actually. I might actually be wrong. Dave will probably tell me if I'm wrong in a minute. But you're pretty much in the championship running there. You have fantastic pace in the Ginetta. Obviously, you're a mini driver, really. Are you sort of looking forward to getting in the mini, or is it a case of that you're really enjoying the rear-wheel drive Ginetta? What are your thoughts on the 4 championships, basically, coming up?
Yeah, I like the way these drive. They're very tricky, but yeah, the rear-wheel drive seems to be quite good, isn't it? But yeah, we'll see in the minis if it carries over.
Did you do much practice in the Ginettas then? Because obviously you've been in quite a few championships that I've been in, and they've been on iRacing, and now obviously you're on AC and slightly different cars and everything. And just you know, how much practice have you put in? How much seat time have you put in for this opening round?
Yeah, I've done a few laps. I must have done about 150 laps maybe. So quite a few.
Well, fair play. That's good to see you jumping up to fight for the championship. We obviously have a few other drivers to have a chat with, so I'll let you go, Callum, but congratulations on your victory there.
Yes, thank you.
And that was Callum Newsham, Dave, and I believe we've got second place man for you to have a chat to in Max Edmondson from that race.
Yeah, we do indeed, and you know, it looked a very, very hectic start of that race, Max. Just want to hear it from sort of your point of view, really, on you know, how hard it was to actually sort of get through the pack and, you know, battle with the drivers that maybe didn't have quite as much pace and, you know, the closing speed difference.
Yeah, well, I had quite a good start, to be fair. I think I got past 2 cars into turn 1, but obviously every car's trying to go forward, no one's trying to go backwards, so I think it was like 5 or 6 cars going for like P2 at one point. It was like pretty scary, but just kept it on, kept it consistent, and pulled away from Ryan, but obviously he was catching at one point, but yeah.
And I've got to be controversial. The move on Maxi Rohrig in race 1, was it sort of a late dive that you realised sort of you couldn't back out of, or do you think, you know, it was a case of the move was done and Maxi realised it a bit late and tried to move across?
Well, he was sort of middle of the track defending, I think, so I went to the right, tried to outbrake him. I outbroke him, but I realised by the time I was up his inside, I broke a tiny, like a metre or 2 later than I should have. But obviously I was up his inside, give him a little nudge, but I've apologised and we'll just see what the steward says.
Oh well, cracking race there anyway in both events, and it's actually put you currently P2 in the championship overall, which, you know, is a fair points haul to take away from round 1, and definitely looking promising for the rest of the championship.
Yep, Tuesdays.
And that was Max Edmondson. And before we go, we will have a chat to our championship leader, race number 1 winner, and back on the podium for that second race as well. Ryan Elliott, welcome back to the commentary booth. I mean, we can now have a little bit more of an extended chat to you, can't we? Because obviously it felt a little bit rushed in between race 1 and 2. But you must be pleased with your evening's work.
I mean, doesn't get much better, really. I did not expect to be coming out with the championship lead. It was a tough start. I don't even think I made a single place for the first 2 laps, maybe, because I could just see everyone was just getting a little bit too racy, and I knew that if I just bided my time, that I'd find a clear bit of track, and eventually did find my way through. Wasn't completely clean though. I got 1 or 2 big unnecessary hits, but you know what? I can't complain. You know, coming out with a championship lead's great.
Well, I was going to say, you said to us that you were going to keep your hands clean and everything, but coming out of, I think, about 7 minutes in or something, they looked absolutely filthy because you were properly getting in on the mix as well. So you can clearly, have the racecraft to go with the race pace as well. Are you reveling in the fact that there are so many drivers so close together in qualifying? Because I think by the end of qualifying, there were 2/10 between the top 4. Is that something that really excites you for this championship?
Absolutely. I mean, we're all here to win. It's good to have good close racing. Makes it interesting, especially for the people at home. And it's just even though I'd love to, absolutely breeze it. It just makes it more fun, more interesting. Makes me push harder, improve as a driver. Like coming into today, I've even found another 10th by just having people around me to push.
Well, that's interesting insight, has to be said. So we're in the Ginettas at the moment. Obviously, we got the JCW Minis sort of right at the end, touring cars, and obviously GT4s. You can actually see them on your screen now. What's the sort of what's your favourite one going into that? Or I suppose, what are your thoughts going forward for the next 3 championships? Obviously, we haven't even finished this one yet, but looking really far ahead, what are your thoughts going towards the other 3?
It's a bit murky water for me, to be honest. I had quite a bad run in the second season of the Mini E Series, and same with the touring cars after having, top 4 overall finish in the first series and multiple wins. I didn't even make it onto the podium in season 2. So I'd like to think that was down to it being open setup and coming into fixed setup leagues like the Honda Civic Cup and the Ginetta GT4 series. I appear to be as good as everyone else, so it'll be really interesting for me, especially to jump in a fixed setup in the Mini and the touring car, just to sort of prove to myself and some of the people that I did have it the entire time.
Well, you certainly have it in the Ginetta, that's for sure. We'll let you go, Ryan, but something I quite like to do before, at the end of most interviews, if we have the time, is allow you to give a little bit of a shout out to anybody you want to give a shout out. Considering you are the championship leader, we'll give you that 30 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thank you to the main sponsor, Mad for Mini Motorsport, Mini Specialists, who run me in the real life Mini Cooper Trophy series, as well as Mum, Dad, girlfriend Rebecca. I know they're watching. I hope I've made it interesting for them, and hopefully they'll be pleased with them results.
Absolutely, yeah, and we're pleased with that as well, because you did keep to my 30-second timeline, so well done. Yeah, thank you very much, Ryan, and all the other drivers for jumping in and having a word with us. And that was all the drivers. And Dave just got a message saying driver of the round, as I'm guessing that's something I'm not entirely sure of, because I'm slightly new to the VRRC, but do talk us through it.
Driver of the round. Yeah, it's a bit of a difficult one that to judge, actually. We've got to look at Callum Newsham drove particularly well. So did Ryan Elliott with the outstanding pace. Robbie Stapleford actually is good points haul, kept himself clean, got through the pack, and Alex Toth Jones, really difficult one that actually, Jack. But I think I'm going to have to say, I'd probably put my neck on the line and say Ryan Elliott for that one, to be fair, with the way he drove. When qualifying is that tight, the amount of pressure that puts on a driver and know that every lap really does count, and you've got to get every last bit of time out of the car. The amount of pressure that puts on you as a driver is, a heck of a lot. You mentioned about the Mini E Series, and trying to fight for poles myself in the Mini E Series, that it really is difficult. When you've thinking about drivers, are going to put a lap time in, and you've got to try and beat it. It puts quite a lot of pressure on. So I think Ryan really did deliver today. It's going to be interesting to see how he does in the rest of the championship. What about yourself?
Sorry, hopefully you heard what I said before. My mic turned off, so all of a sudden I couldn't hear anything then.
I did indeed. Yeah, we did indeed.
Right, that's fair enough.
We heard everything you said, Jack. Don't worry, mate.
That's good. And Rich, welcome to the commentary booth. Apologies about that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just wanted to say, actually, driver of the round actually means something in League of Champions. So Power Max have been very kind and have given us a car cleaning kit worth £35, which we will be awarding to each driver of the round. So every single time we have a round, we'll be talking about who's been our driver of that round, and they will win that car cleaning kit from Power Max. So thank you very much to Power Max for that.
Absolutely awesome. Yeah, thank you very much, Power Max. So is that something that you decide, Rich, as the administrator, or is that something we decide between us and Dave? What's the crack with that then?
Well, I think it's between you two, but I'll give you my view as well, and then it's down. I guess it's down to you guys, right? But for me, it was Ryan. Ryan had a really good round. Unfortunately, Callum had that mistake to start with, which really hampered him. But a lot of the drivers were performing really well coming through the pack. But to come in and do 2 race wins, come out of the first round with the championship lead, it's got to be Ryan for me.
I think Dave, to be honest, I'd probably be saying Ryan as well. I think if Rurig maybe pushed forward a little bit in that second race, a little bit more, maybe there's an argument to be said for him. But Ryan was untouchable in the first race, wasn't he? And he got through to third without too much bother as well, avoided loads of incidents. You can't really argue with that one. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, for me, driver of the day is not just a case of someone who is outright fastest. I'm looking for drivers who impress me on the way they drive, regardless of the lap time. But for me, it was the pressure that was on Ryan going into this round, posting the fastest lap time in the server, going in with the lap times that close, and seeing him go pole, that for me was, where it lay, and impressive driving both races. There was obviously drivers further down the grid that did also impress, and Maxi was one of them. But as you said, I would have liked to have seen him sort of progress a bit more through the grid, through the pack in race 2. But yeah, be definitely one to watch out for in the future rounds in the championship.
Yeah, absolutely. So congratulations to Ryan Elliott for winning the prize, given to us by Power Max. Brilliant to have them along as partners as well. I'm sure Rich will be in touch to make sure that gets shipped to you as soon as possible. But I think that's pretty much all we got time for, Dave, this evening. About time we probably wrapped it up.
Indeed, and a huge thanks to Tom O'Farrell for streaming this. Fantastic quality, and also fantastic championship put together by Rich Hayden.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you everyone for watching. If you have enjoyed what you've seen, please do give a like or a share or a follow or a subscribe, whatever you're watching this on. Make sure you click whatever button is relevant to be sure you're here next week, next Tuesday at the same time, for more AOC Gaming League of Champions powered by VRRC for round 2 of the Ginetta Super Cup Championship. I'm very much looking forward to it. My name's Jack Oliphant, and I've been joined in the virtual comms box by Dave Marshall. Good night.
Between the two of them, the inside of Coates, Barker gets too heavily involved, and that's Whitehead and Coates.